good morning, and welcome to Sunday Sermon. I am Reverend Riff. Thank you all for being here on this Sunday morning. I greatly appreciate it, and we're going to have some fun today. We're going to debut a new segment, Praise Be. I love it, Bale. Thank you for being here. And we're going to debut a new segment to start off today. And then we are going to talk about what an unbelievable dickhead King David is. Like, in all the stories of someone being a douche, this story, it's up there in the pantheon of the all time douchiest things ever. And we're going to get into that. But we have a new segment today. You know that normally we start our Sundays off with the rule of the law. But at the request of some of our viewers, we have decided to start a new segment to start off. And the rule of the law will come back. It's not going away. It's just, taking a little hiatus. What we're going to start with today is a new segment about some of the different beings in the Bible. And the kind of shit that they get up to. And kind of try to learn to identify some different ones and have a little bit of fun with it. So give me 1 second. My visual aid is not quite ready to go. So I do need to fix that here. My apologies. It was a long evening last night. It is going into the desert to discover itself. And it's going to, figure out what it really wants to be. So, our new segment that we're starting today is Angels, Demons, and Other Mythical Bullshit. What we're going to do with this segment is each week that we do this segment, we will talk about an angel. Now, we might do a class of angels. We might do a specific angel. Sky's the limit here. But we're going to do an angel. And then we're going to do a demon. And again, it could be a class of demons, it may be a specific demon or a specific interaction with demons. And other mythical bullshit is exactly what it sounds like. It's other mythical bullshit. The Bible is chocked full of shit that is neither angel nor demon, but certainly not of our world. It doesn't make sense. No one knows what this fucking stuff is. So let's talk about it. Let's dig deep into the weird and wonderful shit that this book provides. Now, as some of you know, I had a rather scary week. I came somewhat close to losing my life through actions, none of which were my fault. And it made me very thoughtful this week. I did a lot of introspection and just kind of, what would have happened if. And I thought it was very interesting that more than one person felt the need to tell me that I didn't just get lucky or, that it just wasn't my time. No, I had multiple people tell me that a guardian angel protected me. I think that's really fun because if you go through the Bible, there's actually no real text to justify guardian angels. They're kind of a fucking magic little add-on that we kind of invented ourselves because it makes us feel good. Now, there are multiple stories in the Bible of angels guarding people and whatnot, but this idea that like everybody has a personal angel that's watching over them, it's kind of nonsense. And that's the kind of nonsense we're here to root out. We're not going to talk about that dumb shit. Yeah, I am not hashtag blessed, hashtag favored, or hashtag God's chosen. I'm none of those things. It actually, like, after the event occurred and we were all kind of standing there trying to process what happened, the one woman was like, I just feel so blessed that we got out of that. And I was like, I swear to God, I'm gonna fucking stab you. Like, don't say that shit to me. So let's dig in, shall we? Our angel of the week is a cherub. Plural would be the cherubim. Now, These are not the little fat fuckers from Renaissance paintings. Just get that image out of your head. These things are pure nightmare fuel. There's nothing cute and cuddly about these fucking maniacs. Like, yes, that is a cherub. That's what that is, Bale. Forget the little fucking pudgy little baby angels running around. These things are fucking insane. Let's dive in. Our buddy Ezekiel, one of my favorite things about the book of Ezekiel that I think makes it a little more interesting to me. It's one of the few books in the Bible, not few, but in the minority, that is written in first person. Ezekiel, you're not getting what somebody says they saw. The book of Ezekiel, he constantly speaks from the first person. I saw this shit. So, when you read about the crazy shit he's talking about, you can at least feel good to know that, you know, he believes that he saw this shit. Now, was he high on drugs? Almost assuredly. We'll get into that. But, well, I guess we won't really get into it today, but I'll go ahead and give you a tidbit from an upcoming sermon. Everybody knows that Mount Ararat is where, you know, Moses went up and got the 10 Commandments from God. At least I assume everyone knows that. Maybe no one knows that, but that's where that happened. To this day, there are shitloads of hallucinogenic materials growing on that mountain. There are plants that if you eat the berries, you will trip balls. There are mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms, that grow on that mountainside. And there are also certain plants that if you burn them, produce a marijuana-like high. So, did Moses talk to a burning bush that gave him stone tablets with rules to make us better people? Maybe. Or maybe he was high off his fucking ass. I mean, that's what I would assume if some guy came out of the mountains and was like, dude, I talked to this bush and it told me that we have to do this shit. And, you know, what's up? Welcome, Turbo Duder. We're, yeah. So maybe Moses really talked to God. Maybe he was high off his ass. I'm going to go with high off his ass. But hey, if you look at that, you know, couple little scenarios like that have changed our history. You know, Moses gets high off his ass, tells everybody it was real. Boom. We got a religion now. We got the 10 Commandments. Mary gets knocked up by a guy that's not her husband. Doesn't really want to get stoned to death. So she comes up with the whole, oh no, it's God's kid. Boom. Now we got a religion. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe it's not. Who knows? But let's talk about the cherubim today, since I'm getting sidetracked, which is easy for me to do. So our buddy Ezekiel has been, the veil has been opened, and God is showing him heaven. Ezekiel sees the throne, and he begins to describe some of the different classes of angels. In Christianity, there are 9 classes of angels. In Hebrew, there is 10, or in, you know, Judaic text, there's 10. It's not a big deal. So, let's get into the text, shall we? And from the midst of it came the likeness of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance. They had a human likeness, but each had 4 faces, and each of them had 4 wings, and their legs were straight, and the soles of their feet were like the soles of a calf's foot, and they sparkled like burnished bronze. Under their wings on the 4 sides they had human hands, and the 4 of their faces and their wings thus. Their wings touched one another, and each one of them went straight forward without turning as they went. So basically what you've got to kind of be envisioning here is these fucking 4-winged whatever the fuck they are, and they're kind of rotating above God's head, tip to tip with their wings in this kind of like rotating moment that it's got to be absolutely insane if you're Ezekiel and you're seeing this. Like, what if that's what he was seeing? Nuts. 4 faces. They're just chanting and flying in patterns around God. Yeah, that's a lot to process, man. The description of these things is nuts. As for the likeness of the faces, each had a human face. The 4 had the face of a lion on the right side. The 4 had a face of an ox on the left side. And the 4 had the face of an eagle. Such were their faces, and their wings were spread out above. Each creature had 2 wings, and each of the which touched the wing of the other, while 2 covered their bodies. And kind of the thought process here is the reason they had to cover their body is that they are so close to the glory of God that it would be like radiation. It would literally melt these people. Oh yeah, Ancient Aliens, this is the text. This text right here is where Eric von Däniken and every other maniac that made that stupid show on History Channel, this is where it came from. This is their 100% belief. This is that to them, this is proof. And we're going to get into that in just a minute. Such were their faces, and their wings were spread out. Each creature had 2 wings, which touched the wing of another while they covered their bodies. So they're covering their bodies with their wings to prevent the glory of God from burning through them. Which, I don't know why their wings are magical, but, you know, hey, that's not me. Not me. How many cherubim do you need to slap to the front of a metal cylinder to generate thrust? It is an interesting show. It's one of those shows. My big beef with Ancient Aliens is they use the Bible when it suits their purpose, and then when it doesn't suit their purpose, they ignore the parts. But I mean, that's just being a Christian, because that's what they do with the Bible. So I guess, you know, who am I to judge? And then they went straight forward. Wherever the Spirit would go, they went without turning as they went. So basically the idea is that they're orbiting God, but they're not turning while they do it. They're kind of staying in a fixed position. And as for the likeness, as for the likeness of the living creatures, their appearance was like burning coals of fire, like the appearance of torches moving to and fro among the living creatures. And the fire was bright, and out of the fire went forth lightning, and the living creatures darted to and fro like the appearance of a flash of lightning. That's fucking nuts. So yeah, we've got these things with apparently 4 faces: a lion, a human, an eagle, and an ox. They've got cloven hoof feet. They apparently have human torsos and hands, but those are covered underneath 2 wings, while 2 more wings are what help them fly about. Yeah, that's what this guy saw, and this poor bastard was trying to describe it the best as he could. He comes back to them in chapter 10 of his book. And as for their appearance, the 4 had the same likeness, as if a wheel were within a wheel. When they went in any of their 4 directions, without turning as they went, but whatever direction the front wheel faced, the others followed without turning as they went. And their whole body, their rims, their spokes, their wings, and the wheels were full of eyes all around, and the wheels that were of 4 of them had. And as for the wheels, they were I could hear the whirling of the wheels. And every one had 4 faces. The first face was the face of the cherub. The second was the face of the human face. The third was the face of a lion. And the fourth was the face of an eagle. So, yeah. What the fuck? What is he talking about here? Let's try and break this down just a little bit, because it doesn't really make a whole fucking lot of sense. Because those seem like 2 different descriptions, right? First, he's describing these things with wings that are flying around in circles with 4 faces, and they're flying above God's head, chanting, "Holy, holy, holy," which has got to be irritating, but that's not the point. And that they flew around in circles. Then he starts describing them as being a wheel within a wheel. That seems completely at odds with what he had previously described. So is it a wheel within a wheel, or is it a 4-winged, 4-faced, clove-hoofed thing? Well, that's where you get into a little bit of... the text gets cloudy, I want to say here. But what I believe is that the wheel within a wheel thing were not actually the cherubim. That was the Merkaba. The Merkaba is the chariot of God. That is what takes Enoch and Elijah up to heaven without dying, which is why in the book of Revelation, many people believe they will be the 2 men who come back to warn humanity of its impending destruction, because everybody has to die once, and since those are the two guys that didn't die, it would make sense that they come back and then are killed in the end of the story. That's where we're at with that. Yeah, they got the most insane of rides. So, there's, in the Bible, there's another section where the prophet Isaiah talks about this same kind of scenario. He's describing what Ezekiel described. Isaiah did not have the same vision. But Exhibit would pimp God's ride. I am all for that spinoff. But I think it's important to keep in mind that there's two different things going on here. And the prophet Ezekiel was describing, he called them, the four-faced things are thought to have actually been the cherubim. So, and the Merkaba was the other thing, but that Ezekiel got, imagine seeing this, or being so high on drugs you think you see this. Either way, it would be really fucking intense. And so him not taking the time when writing this all down to tell us that he was talking about a vehicle and these beings as separate entities is not a big deal. But when you think wheel within a wheel, covered in eyes, that always looks like it's facing forward and can turn without turning. Well, what could do that? That's right, a fucking spaceship. So I'm not going to say that there's spaceships in the Bible. What I am going to say is that Ezekiel specifically describes something that if you had never even seen a fucking car or an airplane, you'd never seen any of that shit, and then you see what's on your screen now, I'm willing to buy that, yeah, that could be really fucking hard for you to process and figure out what the hell you're seeing. So, yeah, you're going to go with, it's a fucking spaceship. That's what you're going to believe. Did he describe a spaceship? I have no idea. I wasn't there. I'm not on those drugs. But it does, the lights around that are often with spaceships. Some folks have said that the four-faced being is actually four guys that he can see inside the spaceship. I think that's getting, again, that to me is reading what you want to read into the text. But who am I to argue? Maybe it's a spaceship. Maybe angels aren't real at all. They're just cosmic travelers, running around doing the Lord's work from their dope-ass spaceships. That would be pretty fucking cool. King David was a xenomorph. Xenomorphs are better people than King David. True story. Angels are just space trucking. That's what you need to take away from this. If you take anything else away from this, take away that angels are space trucking. All right. So now we're on to the demon of the week. I like this story. This story is very cool to me because there is a lot of subtext that people don't get. So we're going to get political for a minute. Not our politics. We're talking the politics of 70 AD or so. Okay? That's the politics we're going to talk about. So, as I talked about, and I think it was our very first episode, the Gospels are kind of crazy that there's four texts that are supposed to be telling the exact same stories, yet they have a lot of differential. We have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Most folks know that. John, we're not even going to reference John because John is the propaganda wing of the New Testament. Pretty much everything in John makes Jesus super magical. Yet this story, where Jesus is super magical, doesn't appear in that text. So who knows what that nonsense is. But yeah, the book of John, not a big fan. We're also, Luke, I would put as he was a doctor. So Dr. Luke was, I think, the most technical of them. He seemed to observe with a doctor, a physician's kind of eyes. So that's why I like his descriptions. Matthew had a real weird habit of changing text, like details that didn't really seem to matter to the story, and nobody knows why he did that. Maybe he's fucking insane. Who knows? And Mark was always just kind of understated. But we're going to start with Mark today, and what we're going to look at is this story of Jesus versus the demon known as Legion, and how the three Gospels kind of change the text And the reason they do is interesting to me, why I think they changed the text. So let's look at it here. They came to the other side of the sea, to the country of Gerasenes. And when they had stepped out of the boat, immediately a man out of the tombs with an unclean spirit met him. He lived among the tombs, and no one could restrain him any more, even with a chain. For he often had been restrained with shackles and chains, but the chains he wrenched apart, and the shackles he broke into pieces, and no one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and on the mountains he was always howling and bruising himself with stones. Sounds like an intense guy. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and bowed down before him, and he shouted at the top of his voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you by God, do not torment me." For he had said unto him, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." Now, a little bit of demonology here for you. Demons cannot exist on, according to canon, demons can't exist on our plane without a host. If they exist for too long on our plane without a host, they are sucked into the abyss, as it is called, which is, it's believed that it's not actually hell, but it's kind of this like nether, almost like the Catholic purgatory, and that demons do not want to go there because they're basically bored shitless there. There's nothing for them to do. So the demon is asking Christ not to cast him out because he will be sucked into the abyss. And Jesus, he's such a nice guy, he even helps out the demon. And the unclean spirits begged him, "Send us into the swine, let us enter them." And he gave them permission. And the unclean spirits came out and entered into the swine, and the herd, numbering about 2,000, rushed down the steep bank into the sea and were drowned in the sea. So, yeah, we've got this guy. He's snapping chains. He's clearly possessed by a demon. And, you know, Jesus asked him, it's kind of interesting. This is why, this right here, this text is why anytime you've ever seen an exorcism in a movie, part of the exorcism is asking the demon their name. Why? Because that's how Jesus started. He said, "What's your name?" And they replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many." And so it's kind of interesting that, you know, Jesus started off that way. So Jesus kind of gives you the template for how to perform an exorcism here. He cast the demons out. They jumped into these 2,000 pigs that ran down a hill and drowned in the water. Horrible for the pigs. But, you know, Jesus is kind of getting to a message here. We'll get to that. Then they arrived at the country of Gerasenes. Now this is Dr. Luke, which is opposite Galilee. As he stepped out on land, a man said he had demons in him for a long time. He had worn no clothes, and he did not live in a house but in the tombs. Basically the same text. When he saw Jesus, he fell down. "What do you want to do with me? Don't torment me." Jesus asks him what the name is. Says he's Legion. Jesus, you know, casts out the demons, tells them they can go into the pigs. The pigs rush down into the water and drowned. Does Jesus hate pigs? That's, you know, a valid question here. No. But I think it's important to point out that why is there a herd of pigs? Why? Pigs are an unclean animal. Hebrews would not have been herding pigs. They weren't even allowed to touch pigs. Like, why were all these pigs there? Well, because at this time, Jerusalem was being occupied by the Romans. And that gets us to the political bent here. Let's read. Now let's look at our homeboy Matthew. His text makes no sense, and that will get us to the crux of why. When he came to the other side of the country of Gadarenes, 2 demoniacs, which also, if somebody doesn't have a band named Demaniac right now, you better start one, coming out of the tombs met him. They were so fierce that no one could pass that way. Why are there 2 from 1? That seems like a big detail to change, but again, that's what Matthew does. He changes details that don't seem to make a lot of sense. "What have you to do with us, Son of God? Have you come here to torment us before the time?" Now see, this shows that demons are aware that they are on the losing side. They've read the end of the book. They know how this goes and that they lose. So this is kind of playing into that idea that demons know they're going to end up in hell. So their goal is to take as many people there with them and cause as much pain and suffering and consternation as they can before they get there. That is a very New Testament view. That is not a view of the Old Testament. But yeah, in the New Testament, it's kind of like they know they're going down. They're just trying to take people down with them. The demons begged him, "If you cast us out, send us into the herd of swine." And he said to them, "Go." So they came out and entered the swine, and suddenly the whole herd rushed down the steep bank into the sea and perished in the water. So, we now have, we've got 3 accounts of this. And the only real major change that we've noticed from our 3 texts is that he changed it from 2 to 1. That's not as big of a deal. But the second one is. And the second text is that he left out the name. Why is that name important? I'll tell you why that name is important. You're here, so you must care. The reason that name is important is not that it was a very specific name. There were a bunch of demons in him, and they took a collective name of Legion. Well, Legion would have been a name that a reader of the time would have associated with the Roman legions, the occupying force there in Israel. And if you know your ancient Jewish text, they reason that to this day, Jews do not believe that Jesus was actually Mashiach, or the promised one, is because he did not drive the Romans out of Israel. Their belief was that the Son of God was supposed to come to liberate them. And so, since Jesus did not actually liberate the people from the Romans, that's why modern Jews do not believe he was Mashiach. They believe he's a good man. They believe he was a prophet. They believe he performed miracles. All that stuff they buy into. They do not believe that him dying on the cross absolved us of our sins and created a new covenant, because the key thing he was supposed to do was destroy the Romans, and he didn't. So when you look at Luke and Matthew's text, by naming the demons Legion and casting them into pigs, you can definitely pick up kind of an overtone there that they're subtly calling the occupying Romans pigs and hinting that God is going to destroy them like the swine that they are, and that's what Jesus is going to do. Now, why would Mark leave that out? That seems really important. Matthew, why would he leave that out? That seems really important. Matthew was a Roman sympathizer. When we first meet Matthew, he is a tax collector by the name of Levi, who is super rich. So rich that the minute Jesus tells him to stop being a tax collector and come follow him, he immediately throws a huge party for Jesus with all of his other rich friends, and Jesus comes and talks and ministers to all these people. And he just drops everything and starts following Jesus, changes his name to Matthew. But when you look through his text, there is definitely an air of sympathy to Romans, which would kind of account for why he's the only one that mentions that story that doesn't tell us that his name was Legion. Why? Because he didn't like the propaganda that was going on there. So that's that little story. Jesus versus, Legion. And the real subtext was Jesus versus Rome. That's what they were kind of hiding in the story there that was not, on the surface isn't there. So I hope you enjoyed that. Well, our mythical bullshit of the week is the Nephilim. These things make no sense. This is one of the murkier parts of an already very murky book. They're mentioned 3 times in the Bible. We're only going to look at the first 2 today because the third time is the subject of much debate as to whether they're actually mentioning the Nephilim or whether they are mentioning true demons, fallen angels. And it's not really relevant to what we're talking about, so we're going to skip that part because I can. So, this is the first time they're mentioned. Whoops, hold on. I've already screwed the pooch here. Hold on. I apologize. Give me 1 minute to fix things here. I'm too trigger happy here. I've ruined the whole PowerPoint presentation. I apologize, folks. Give me 1 second. There we go. Okay. I think we're good now. Yeah, there we are. Okay. When human beings began to increase in number on the earth and the daughters were born to them, the sons of God, this is generally taken to mean angels, saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. Then the Lord said, My spirit will not contend with humans forever, for they are mortal. Their days will be 120 years. I don't know anybody living to 120, but I feel gypped. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. So basically, the Nephilim, according to this text, are the children of angels or demons, depending on how you want to look at it, and human women. Which is kind of interesting because so many modern texts have depicted angels as being androgynous. And, you know, that clearly is not supported by the text right there. The second time they are mentioned, our good buddy Joshua is out. He sent some spies into the land of Canaan to check out what's going on. And when the spies come back, they are scared shitless. I mean, they are quaking in their sandals. And this is why. They said, But the men who had gone up with him said, We can't attack those people. They are stronger than we are. And they spread amongst the Israelites a bad report about the land they had explored. They said, The land we explored devours those living in it. All the people we saw are of great size. We saw the Nephilim there. The descendants of Anak come from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them. So basically, they're saying that, you know, these guys are so big, we appear like grasshoppers to them. Yeah, maybe the Nephilim are aliens too. I mean, if we're going to believe that angels are aliens, then if the aliens come and breed with the humans and create giants, there's been some speculation that Goliath was a descendant of the Nephilim, and that's why he was a giant. Again, all that we know is that they're mentioned as being gigantic. Now, there's some text that actually describes this as a lie and says that the spies were cowards. And so they came back and they didn't want to go into Canaan and go into battle with all the different people there to try to take the land that, you know, supposedly God had promised them. So it was just really a lot easier for these guys coming up like, you can't. There's fucking giants there, dude. Giants. Like, they're huge. We can't beat these guys. We should probably just stay here. I'm thinking it's good. We can't fight giants. Does that make any sense? Probably not. Why would they lie? Who knows? But then we were like, okay, so you say they're giants. Well, Chad, how big are they? Oh, let's look at how big they are. Let's do that, shall we? Our buddy Enoch, the guy who didn't die, he wrote his book, which we will do when we do our segment on the Council of Nicaea and why the books that got chosen for the Bible got chosen and the ones that didn't. Enoch made the mistake of making his book too fucking cool. It has all kinds of wild shit that even guys that read the Bible were like, this is insane, no one's going to believe this. So that tells you how batshit out there Enoch's book had to be, that, you know, with all the other stuff that we've talked about that's in the Bible, they looked at his book and were like, dude, that's intense. Nobody wants to do that. So Enoch describes the Nephilim. He describes them as being great giants whose height is 3,000 ells. An ell is equal to 18 inches or 45 centimeters. So yes, that would make them 4,500 feet tall. They are almost a mile tall. Now, I don't know if any of you know anything about structural engineering. The human body is not meant to be 4,500 feet tall. It's just not built like that. So the idea of a 4,500 foot tall person is so comical that For many years, scholars have wondered, is there a translation error? Did he mean 300 L's, which would be 450 feet tall? That's still really insane tall. Like, I don't think it really matters. He could, even if you went to 30, 45 feet tall, that's still like, Goliath was, I think, 9 feet when you measure out the height that Goliath was listed as being. So 9 feet to 45 feet to 4,500 feet, that's crazy. To this day, you will, anytime giants are mentioned, somebody will bring up the Nephilim. Anytime that there's a hoax, and they used to find giant skeletons, I don't know if anybody's familiar with the hoax that went on in the United States back in I want to say the turn of the century. There was these two brothers, they were kind of P.T. Barnum style guys, and they had skeletons made out of plaster that looked like they were giants. And they toured around telling people that these were the skeletons of Nephilim. And people bought it and paid money to come see them, and it was a great scam. The Nephilim are one of those interesting things that, like I said, there's 3 verses about them. We've read 2 of them. The other verse just is our buddy Ezekiel again, just describing that he was in an area where the Nephilim used to be. And some people think that the text he actually meant was he was in a land where demons used to be. Again, it's kind of irrelevant to what we're talking about, but it is interesting that the Nephilim are mentioned twice. Not a whole lot of context, not a whole lot of stuff, but they have really engaged people's minds for thousands of years. People have been debating, what are the Nephilim? Who are the Nephilim? Do we know any of the Nephilim? And then, of course, there was the Noah movie with Russell Crowe, which I'm not going to show you a picture of the Nephilim from that. But if you really want to watch a movie that literally didn't pay any attention to the story it was telling you, go watch Noah starring Russell Crowe. And then we can talk about that, because they didn't pay any attention to the actual story. So that's the Nephilim. So now we get to our main part of the message today. You don't need to see that Noah movie. Well, I mean, it's interesting. It's not at all the story of Noah. I don't know what the fuck it is, but it's interesting. We're going to talk about fallen heroes today. The King David, he's, kind of a big deal in the Bible. It is a fun time for laughs. I will admit that. Maybe we'll watch that on a Wednesday night if we could. That would be hilarious. King David, kind of a big deal. The father of the Jewish people, really when they became a nation, he was the guy who spearheaded that, in theory. I don't think he really existed. He's kind of like King Arthur. But I digress. And much like King Arthur was, not the most upstanding guy. King David, unfortunately, was similar. There's a famous painting there that I've got on your screen. That is the painting of Absalom being killed by Joab. And we'll get to that. But that scene right there happens because David can't keep his dick in his pants, folks. It's that simple. It's that simple. So, again, there's a lot of context in this story. I think most people know the story of David and Bathsheba. It was made into a very popular movie. And, people have heard the story. It's often presented as a tale about lust. I don't think it is. So, in 2 Samuel, chapter 11, verse 1, "Then it happened in the spring, at the time when kings go out to battle, that David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel. And they destroyed the sons of Ammon and besieged Rabbah. But David stayed at Jerusalem." And I think that's important. Right off the bat, let's talk about what this is actually talking about, okay? What is really the story here? Well, so in the springtime when kings go out to battle, that should be self-explanatory. It's tough to move troops in shitty weather, especially back then. So springtime is when the military campaigns would have occurred because troop movement was possible. David was finishing up the mop-up from the military campaign the previous year. The Syrians had been paid by the Ammonites to attack the Israelites. They had beaten the Israelites, had fended off the Syrians, and were now kicking the Ammonites' ass as payback. And so David goes, "This is mop-up duty. I'm not even going. I'm going to stay home. Joab, take the boys. Go handle your business. I'm going to stay here. I'm not feeling like going out tonight." Right there, I think it's very important, if you look at the way the text is presented, that the text very clearly says when kings go out to battle and David stayed home. So right there, they're pointing out that this story, David is shirking his responsibility. If David had been out at battle, where he should have been, leading his army like a good king would, he wouldn't have had time to get involved in all this nonsense. So right off the bat, if you do what you're supposed to be doing, you can't get in trouble when you're at the wrong place. That is actually a solid lesson for all of us. You don't have to be a Christian to believe that if you don't put yourself in situations where you can do bad things, it's easier to not do bad things. That's just common logic, I think. So we get to the story, and I'm going to do a quick retelling of the story for those who don't know the story of David and Bathsheba. We're not going to read all the text. It goes on for chapters. So basically, David, he's not doing what he's supposed to be doing. He's chilling at the palace. In the middle of the night, he gets up and goes up on the roof. Now, some authors have taken that text to mean that David literally had been in bed all day doing nothing and finally got out of bed and it was dark and went up onto the roof. You could interpret it that way if it's like really reinforcing that David is being a lazy piece of shit. It could have been that he just woke up because he had to take a piss in the middle of the night. Either way, it's the middle of the night, or late at night anyway, and David's up on the roof of his palace chilling. He looks over and sees Bathsheba taking a bath. This chick is a dime piece. She's super hot. And he is immediately smitten with this beautiful woman taking a bath. Now, modern Christians who love to pervert the Bible into any way they can shit on women have turned this text into a modesty lesson. And they claim that if Bathsheba had covered herself up, she wouldn't have tempted David. So yeah, no, David's totally wrong for what he did. But if he hadn't been tempted, it wouldn't have, so they try to put some of the blame on her. First of all, if David had been where he was supposed to be in the first place, leading his fucking army, he wouldn't have been there to get tempted. So I'm not here for your misogynistic bullshit there. Second of all, much like we don't blame women for why they get raped, we blame rapists. We do not blame women for why men cheat on their wives and why men have affairs. We blame the men who do these things. Stop passing the buck, motherfucker. It's on you. Thirdly, it's many morons. I'm not even going to call them contemporary Christians. I'm just going to call them morons because there are some very good contemporary Christians out there. I'm sure of it. Morons be like, oh, well, she was bathing in public. Okay, first of all, fuckboy. That was really common back then. Second of all, she was on her goddamn roof because that's where you did such things back then. The roof was an extension of your house. She was up there bathing. It's the middle of the night. It's not her fault that this creepy perv is leering at her. So again, stop blaming her. So, this goes on. David sees her bathing. He sends out word. He's like, who is that woman? They're like, her name is Bathsheba. He goes, bring her to me. They bring her. They do the nasty. And again, morons try to point that it doesn't say David raped her, so clearly she was a willing participant in all this. Maybe she was. And maybe when the king tells you to get to his place and then whips it out, you do what you do because he's the king. Like, I feel like power and coercion there. I'm not willing to say Bathsheba consented to this. Again, I'm tired of people tarring and feathering Bathsheba in this story. David is the douchebag here. So, they do their thing. And by all accounts, David enjoys doing his thing a lot. The Bible points out that God had kind of told David, seriously, dude, have one wife. You don't need a whole bunch. Don't be like the other kings, because if you have a lot of wives, they will lead you astray. Now, of course, people like to, again, try to shit on women and claim that that's the text telling us that, women are deceivers and they're temptresses. No. What they were meaning is back then it was very common when you married a woman for a political means, that she brought her religion to your court. And God was basically saying, don't go making all these alliances, marrying all these foreign women, and then they're going to bring in all of these foreign influences, and you're going to start worshiping other gods than me. That was the real text there, not that women are bad. Again, the Bible's not nearly as misogynistic as the misogynists who read it make it out to be. So, Bathsheba calls David. He gets the call. She's like, dude, I'm knocked up. It's yours. So David is like, fuck. What am I going to do? So he calls Uriah the Hittite. And he says, that's Bathsheba's husband. He says, Uriah, I'm calling you home from battle. Uriah does the straight out of Saving Private Ryan, but King, sir, I don't want to come home. I want to stay here and fight with my guys. David says, I said get home, get home. So he comes home. David now says, go, lay with your wife and enjoy your evening with her, and spend some time with your wife. Uriah, because he's just that good of a fucking dude, is like, I can't enjoy the comforts of my wife while my men are out there sleeping on the battlefield. So he won't even go in his house. Uriah sleeps on the ground in front of his house, begging David to let him go back to battle to be with his men. Because this guy is fucking awesome. That's why he's got the hot wife. He's fucking cool. So David is like, this is going nowhere. She has that kid. Everybody's going to know it's not Uriah's. I'm fucked. So David does the real shady shit. He writes a letter, and in true douchebag form, seals it, gives it to Uriah, and tells Uriah, take this letter to Joab. So Joab, of course, is David's general. Uriah takes the letter, gives it to Joab. Joab opens it up, and the letter says, I want you to put Uriah on the very front line, get into a pitched battle, and then I want you to retreat, hang him out to dry, so to ensure that he gets killed. Joab, just following orders, does what he's supposed to do, and Uriah gets killed. Now David marries Bathsheba and is like, hey, no, I totally knocked her up when we got married, not all that time when her husband was home. It's a scandal in the court. Everybody knows what went down. The baby that David conceived with Bathsheba dies. But that's not the end of God's punishment. No, God is pissed because David did some real dickhead shit. So, the prophet Nathan comes to David, and this is one of my favorite sequences because it is a self-own of epic level. Nathan comes to David and goes, my king, I want to tell you a story. He said, did you know that there was this rich man, and he had thousands of sheep? He was just so rich. He had sheep as far as the eye could see. And he knew a poor man. That poor man only had one little lamb, but he loved that lamb. It meant the world to him. He treated that lamb like family. One day a traveler came to the rich man's property and said, can you feed me? And the rich man didn't want to take one of his thousands of sheep, so he went and took the lamb from the poor man, and he slaughtered that and fed it to the traveler. David is outraged. He demands to know who this rich man is, that he be brought to him right now so that David can kill him. And that's when Nathan drops the hammer. Dude, you're the rich man. Uriah was the poor man. And David is crushed. He rips his clothes, goes into a massive depression, and begs God to forgive him for everything that he'd done. Well, while this is going on, David's son from one of his other wives, Absalom, who is known as the most beautiful man in the world. Everybody talks about what a gorgeous guy he is. He's started to become a bit full of himself. And he is a bit of a hothead. He murdered his half brother for raping his half sister. I guess you could call it a justifiable homicide, but David wasn't real happy about it, so he had kind of sent him away to, hang out. While he had been hanging out, he started listening into his own hype, and everybody was like, yeah, you're cool. You're the man. And, you know what? You should be running shit, not your dad. And Absalom listened to those people for a bit too long. And next thing you know, he starts an uprising. David is actually chased out of Jerusalem and has to go into the hills, but uses some spies that he gets into Absalom's court to feed Absalom some bad information, which causes Absalom to make a tactical blunder. And they get in, their armies meet. David's army routs Absalom's army. Absalom is fleeing. He was known for having long, beautiful hair. The long, beautiful hair gets caught in a tree, and it yanks him off of a horse. He is hanging in the tree by his hair. Now, David had given very specific instructions that nobody was to touch Absalom. That Absalom was supposed to, be taken prisoner, but not killed. Because it was David's son. He still loved him. He said it was David's favorite son, and the guy had a lot of sons. But Joab, our guy who David used to pull the trigger on Uriah, Joab is the one who finds Absalom. Oh, thanks so much for being here, man. I absolutely love it. I hope you come back next week. Dude, so great. Glad you could be here. But, yeah, we have a lot of fun with this. But, yeah, so Joab shows up. Absalom's hanging from the tree. And Joab thinks back to David forcing him to murder one of his best soldiers because David fucked dude's wife. So what does Joab do? Joab takes 3 darts and throws them through Absalom's heart, killing him. And word gets back to David that Absalom is dead. Does not get back to him how Absalom died, just that Absalom's dead. And David goes into an even bigger depression to the point that Joab basically has to go slap him around and drag him back to the palace. But like, dude, you are king. Get your shit together and start doing some king stuff. And when that happens, he finally gets his shit together. But the point of the story is that David's lust gets Uriah killed. It destroys David's look in front of the people. He, gets his son killed eventually. All because he had to fuck somebody else's wife. I don't care what you do. But don't be a homewrecker. Don't be a dick. And especially, don't get people killed to cover up your shit. I think that is one of the key parts of this story, is that it was bad enough what David did, but the whole situation continues to exponentially get worse and worse because he can't just come clean with what he did, and instead, as he tries to cover it up, he makes the situation worse and worse and worse. So, basically, keep it in your pants and man up when you do something dumb. Don't try to cover it up. You're just going to make it worse. He just digs the hole deeper. That is 100% what happened. And all that he accomplished was killing his most loyal soldier. I mean, an absolute rock star of a soldier, losing the respect of his generals to the point that they, don't follow his orders anymore. And what did he get out of it? He destroyed... And Bathsheba, she's really never mentioned again. After the baby dies, she's never really mentioned again, because what are women in the Bible if not cannon fodder? But she is as much a victim as anyone in this story, and it really bugs me how when this story is retold, people don't paint her as a victim. She is painted as being part of, as the temptress who led David astray. not as the victim of this raging horn dog who was willing to kill people because he wanted to fuck her, even though he had a harem of his own. So basically, be thankful for what you have. Don't covet other people's shit. And definitely don't fuck other people's girls. It's just not cool. It's just not cool. Like, don't be a dick. That's, again, I feel like every week when we get to the end of it, what it really boils down to is just don't be a dick. That's really where we're at. So, I hope you all have a very good Sunday. I hope that you learned something today. And I hope that you go out and be like Uriah. Don't be like David. Be a Uriah. David's portrayed as the hero. Uriah, he's the real king in this story. So, definitely, be a Uriah, not a David. Thanks for being here this week. I greatly appreciate it, as I do every week. Next week, we will continue with the angels, demons, and mythical bullshit, as well as another segment of Fallen Hero. We're going to do a couple segments like that, and then we may take a quick break for a week so that I can revamp the format, and then we're going to start Season 2, as it were, of the Sunday Sermons. But thanks to everybody for being here. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. And I guess let's get out of here, but let's see if any of our homies are streaming and we can give them a raid. I know it may be a little bit early for some of that, but let's find out. Lord Bale is there, so we're going to raid our buddy Bale. We love him. I love all of you for being here. Thanks so much. Have a good week, and I look forward to hanging with you next week, everybody. Thanks for being here.